Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Innovation Deciphered. I'm your host, Tip Top Tim Fitch, and today I'm being joined by David Maddison, who works for a company called Abintra, a really interesting technology and consulting business. So sit back and enjoy. Well, hi David, and welcome everybody.
Hi Tim.
To the latest episode of Innovation Deciphered. My guest today is David Maddison, who's had a very interesting career, but we're obviously going to talk mostly about what he's doing now for a company called Abintra Consulting, which is a very interesting mixture of consulting and hardware technology. So, David, let's get going.
Yeah.
Very glad you could join us.
Great to be here.
Now, doing my extensive research before you arrived today, I see you've had an interesting career because you're now in this technology space in terms of property and how people use buildings. That wasn't how you started, was it?
No. My whole career up until the last 6 years was really steeped in aviation, in the world of the threads of aviation. I worked for an airline, and then I was in distribution for airlines, and I ended up in the arena of telematics, particularly for airport ground support equipment. And you'd say, well, where are the synergies between that and what I'm doing now? Well, actually, it was my brother-in-law's brother-in-law, so there was a tenuous family link, and I got a call. We kind of meet at Christmas and stuff like that, but I got a call from him, and he said, this is a bit left field, but I think this is right up your street. And he went on to describe the guys that are helping Aon. He worked for Aon, Steve Stedman, and he described the Abintra team as being fabulous, almost best thing since sliced bread, and that there was an opportunity for, if you like, their solutions to be taken to another level. And he just said, why don't you go and have a meet with Tony and see what you think? So that's what I did, and I was smitten by Tony, by his approach. Actually, I'd kind of been through, big companies and the way they work, and cliches aside, I loved the ethics and the ethos of Tony and what they do. And there was definitely a link, because it was looking at, rather than an engine and the use of an engine on airport ground support equipment, the utilisation of that equipment and its efficiencies. This was kind of taking it to, if you like, a similar space, but in the world of the workplace. It was looking at workplace utilisation, and that's kind of it in a nutshell. And the rest is kind of history. So I've been with Bintra for the last 6 years, and I love the space we're in. Pardon the pun.
Good pun though. You don't have to apologise for good puns. So let's just unpack that a little bit more about Abintra. So Abintra's this. I know I've said it's a consultancy business, but you've also got some hardware as well.
Yeah, Abintra. In fact, one of the first questions, Abintra, how does that name come around? It actually is Latin from within. So that's what the name Abintra. And if you like, the beginnings of Abintra, quite simply, was three guys that had come together that were working in this arena, that came to the conclusion there's got to be a better way than, and this was 20 years ago, but the only way of measuring utilisation and efficient use of space was through what is still deemed a walkthrough, which is like somebody going around with a clipboard, an iPad now, literally walking through an office and looking at what spaces were being used, and that's better than nothing. the only issues with that really was that the data was only the snapshot at that time of the day. So if it was 10 in the morning, it was what was happening at 10 in the morning and then at 2 in the afternoon. And that might be held over 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. And then you'd get a report as to, you know, what your utilisation of space was going to be. Well, it's got to be a better way than that. And I guess that's where the technology element came in. So Abintra were the first company, if you like, to develop technology-based solutions to measure the utilisation of space.
I guess this is what, is it a camera or something?
No, well, nowadays the world and his wife is kind of getting involved in sensor technology. We have under desk sensor-based solutions, and when I say under a desk, if we look at this table here, you might have 8-10 spaces. We would install a sensor under each position. So if it was this is a meeting room, but we would measure each space. Now, I guess the fundamental thing, and it's one of the first thing that crops up, is about people. Big Brother. We don't, and never have done, we don't measure people. And where's Barry, in the office? The sensor positioned, and this is critical as well, positioned in the right place. It's hidden, so it's not visible. And it detects heat and movement. And it works wirelessly. So, if you like, it works on 2 AA batteries, and they would typically last about 5 years. So the sensor only detects heat and movement, and it reports, is there somebody at that space? And that, if you like, that process is is capturing data every 8 seconds or something like that. So it's capturing data all the time. The sensor itself will send data through a router, which sits on site, tending to be in the office environment, and then the routers will then send that data to a data logger that also sits on site. So that's the kind of simplicity, if you like, of the process. And we tend to, I think one of the great things about what we do, because obviously now, pre-COVID and post-COVID, the world is very different. I'll say a little bit different. It's very different. We've been doing what we do, which is focusing on utilisation and data and reporting of utilisation for the last 20 years. And the office, since its invention back in the 1700s, has always evolved. It's always been evolving. It always will evolve. So none of this is kind of new to us. It's about, actually what spaces are being used, how are you using your space, and rather than that, if I was to ask somebody, do you know what the utilisation of your workplace is, you'd kind of get a gut feel or a reckon response. So I reckon it's about 60%, 70%, whatever it might be. The realities have always delivered a different picture. The realities of it is that you might think it's 70%, but that's based on anecdotal or your own gut feel. The realities are it's always less than 50%.
Always?
Yeah. In our experience.
Yes.
Now, obviously, there are certain sizes of companies that it's going to be more applicable or more appropriate for. If you're a 10-man business, then the chances are where your colleagues are at one given time, and so. But the larger it becomes, the larger your workforce is, the harder it is to manage, and there's all these little nuances that sort of, and particularly now where the working week has kind of developed to what it is at the moment. So it might be 2 or 3 days a week. So you're trying to manage the whole process of, not who's in the office, but are you getting the most out of your space? Because let's face it, real estate is very expensive and it's always there. So it's about finding out if that's providing value to you as a business and the people that make that business up. And that's the people part, which is the kind of key thing. So although we don't measure people, it is about, when push comes to shove at the end of the day and all those cliches, it's about delivering the right environment for your people.
So I'm guessing all of these sensors, you find out which meeting rooms are being used, which desks are most popular, as well as how often they're used.
Yeah, Tim, that's pretty much it, really. It is measuring all space, and that's kind of the fundamental. It's a bit like going back to the world of telematics. You could measure one type of equipment, but that wouldn't give you the overall picture of your utilisation. It's the same with space. It's to say, well, actually, we know this meeting room is only used X percentage of time, and we've got to have a boardroom, this, that, and the other. But it's saying, what about the rest of your space? So if you can measure the whole thing, then you get a picture of how well used your occupancy is. And we're not saying you have to have everyone back in the office or work from home or whatever. That's up to individual businesses to decide. But it's about actually measuring the efficient use of space. Have you got enough space? Have you got too much space? And that's what it's about. I suppose at the end of the day, when we deliver the reporting, because we'll either do it as a survey, so we can do a survey-based project, which might be for 1 month. So we'd literally come in, and we would do the installation of sensors, and inclusive of everything, you get all the reporting through the portal. Or you can have it then full time, and in fact a lot of our clients have, if you like, extended. They've had the survey, the toe in the water, and the benefits, which are very wide ranging, have been that strong that they said, well, actually we'd like this on a permanent basis so that we can measure our ongoing, and so that we can keep this kind of live and running. And so it's about, I suppose, delivering those kind of key benefits across the board that enables businesses, or enables a business to look at options. So I'm not saying this is what you have to do. It's to say these are the facts around how your space is being used, and a lot of the time that's a sharp intake of breath. Wow, I didn't realise it was like that. So what it does is it gives options. We don't do fit outs or anything like that. So it's just the provision of data in a meaningful way that delivers the facts, if you like. Wow, is it, well, what could we do? It's like, well, maybe you don't need to, as many floors as you need. Here's a great example of one of our clients that, when asked this, what's the return on investment, and quote unquote, the response was, well, you're talking telephone numbers, because we didn't have to exercise options on 2 floors that we took out in, well, it was the cheese grater. That would have been very expensive had that commitment gone ahead, where in fact the data is telling them they don't need to exercise that, so they don't need those 2 floors. Hence, you're talking telephone numbers as savings. So it's the provision of data, the meaningful, if you like, the reporting that surrounds that. Because data in itself is one thing, but it's what that means is another.
I've got a few follow-ups to all of that. It's all very, very interesting. I'm guessing that the time of year that you do the survey is important. So do you do it over an extended period? Because we did it in our office in August.
Yeah.
Whatever the utilisation is, which will be low, even lower.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, that does have a bearing, of course, and which is why, we would say, and we are asked, frequently to say, well, could you do us a week? And you'd say, well, a week isn't going to be long enough, and ideally, a month really isn't long enough, but a month would give you that, well, actually people are coming back from holidays, or there's going to be sickness, and if there's tube strikes and train strikes and all those things that are around today, then the timing is important, but it's not critical. You're running a business throughout the whole year, so allowing for holidays, you would say, well, actually, if you're looking at August, you could still do it in August, because your whole business doesn't close down, unless that's the case, in which you'd say, well, let's make it September. So it's about being flexible. It's really all about understanding what a client is looking to achieve, and not square peg into round hole. It's about delivering a solution that's appropriate and will work, and that includes at the right time.
So you've got your sensors, all the data goes up. You said that the reporting is critical. Is there some process? What's the process that the data goes through to get put into a report?
Well, as I kind of mentioned earlier, Tim, it's the data is uploaded into a portal, so it goes through the sensor, through the router, onto the data logger, then onto the portal. So you actually get a whole series of reports that will give you detailed analysis and data on exactly, and you can filter it down, so you can actually look, I just want to look at this room or those rooms, or just let's have a look at the meeting rooms, or we're looking at the collaboration spaces, so you can filter it and see what spaces are being used and how they're being used, during the day, or what day, so that you then actually get a really clear picture at the end of a period of time, a month, 6 weeks, whatever it might be, that says, wow, there's a pattern here. This area is not being used, even though people say they love it, and they use it all the time. And that's, the reality is that, and I'm guilty of the next man by saying, well, if I look at space that I have in my shed, and what I might store in my shed, and my wife says to me, when's the last time you looked at this? So I'm a kind of natural hoarder, and the realities are, I'd say, I use it all the time. Well, in reality, I don't. This just provides the facts that say, actually, that space isn't being used, and it gives some alternatives. Not to say, actually, and this is going back to the Big Brother, it's not measuring people. So it's not about, we don't need as many people in our office or in our employ. It's about, actually, it's about your business, it's about the people, but it's creating that environment that's appealing, that actually makes people want to come into a good environment, and that helps, of course, in, if you're motivated, you enjoy being in the office, it's got a great team spirit, etc., then that's good for productivity. It's just a natural thing, really. So, they're all kind of aligned, if you like. So it is all about people.
And your hardware sensors, they're just measuring the fact that there's somebody there.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's measuring the air atmosphere, the content of the atmosphere? And
yeah, so that's a good question. If you like, our core business was and remains really around utilisation of space and the workplace tending to be in the corporate environment. But that, if you looked at our clients, they're very wide-ranging, pretty much in every sector. Now, about 10 years ago, and this was, when I joined, I thought, God, surely this is going to be in demand. But I was very surprised at the lack of interest in measuring environmental conditions. It was like, well, is this, and I'm talking about light, noise, temperature, and perhaps importantly with COVID, CO2 levels within the office. Is it a healthy environment to be in? So we also measure separately, that's a separate sensor, but and you don't need the volume, so it's not one per under each desk or anything like that. But yeah, we measure those areas as well, which have great impact into the overall the well-being of the office environment. So yeah, that's it's relatively new.
I'm guessing you can overlay those two things and say these poorly lit desks are less popular, or more popular, whichever it is.
Yeah, because you can look at actually how, if you had this full of people, this meeting room we're in now, there would be an optimum. You'd say, well, actually, there might be 12 people in here. What's the environment going to be like after 30 minutes? Actually, the CO2 levels are going to be sky high or not. So we'll open the doors, and then hey ho, the noise is creeping out as well, and so there's noise going both ways. So, or you could turn the ventilation. You can adjust the ventilation. So it is quite interesting how in a very hot office environment, and this is an interesting one, that staff didn't necessarily complain that it was feeling uncomfortable and hot earlier. It's just they don't come in the next day.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. No, it was. That was a hot environment.
That makes me think, because in our office there's always a battle between you get the air temperature high enough.
Yeah.
We've got a large contingent who weren't born in London and are used to a very hot climate.
Yeah.
And 21 degrees is too cold for them.
Yeah. Well,
I prescribe the light knit.
The marvellous thing, I mean, God, we're all humans, we're people, we're all different, and that's the kind of critical piece. You can't say, we're creating this environment because everyone loves to party, because no, that might not be everyone's cup of tea. So it's balancing that whole thing, and some people might like it really hot, some people might like it really cold. I often sit on the sofa, my wife's freezing and I'm boiling, or the other way around. We are all different, and so don't put everyone in the same box. It's kind of what.
So this has been really fascinating, hearing about the history and the here and now. Have you got any data of their secret? But what's next in the pipeline in terms of development?
I think if you're looking at the connected building, AI, and all of those things, there's so much around in if you like the industry, the sector. It's all about technology and pressing a button and everything is solved. Actually, that's probably quite a long way off. I think where we're going, and this is being driven, if you like, logically through our clients that say, well, actually, this is great, we would need this, and this is kind of key in dialogue with your clients. What else would you need? What would improve? And it's looking at the reporting, the ease of reporting. How does that look? Wow, yeah, wouldn't it be great to have that overlaid by, if you like, who's coming into the office from the turnstiles. They've got data coming in there. We've got data. So it's actually looking at, well, how might this data overlay with that data to give you the kind of like bingo. Wow, this is incredible. It was actually in a recent seminar. It was a client that this is where the old memory plays tricks on you, because there was. Somebody had said about, wouldn't it be great to go back to the pre-COVID days when everyone was in, and that in itself was like, actually, hold on, because you're assuming that we had like 100% occupancy, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, pre-COVID, and then post-COVID it all went a bit, haywire. Well, actually, that was happening anyway. So you weren't the data actually says, no, we didn't have that. You know, this was the occupancy levels pre-COVID, and that's changed slightly. But now we're looking at the days of the week. You know, Mondays, Fridays, perhaps not as well used as midweek. But it's having that information presented in a way that makes sense for the user and also their own internal clients, the C-suite you're looking at. Actually, here, you know, so we're looking at, you know, Power BI and reporting, and the elements that make it really easy. So it's taking data from one source and another, overlaying, and, you know, coming up with the clarity that's really needed. This is what your business is doing at the moment.
David, on that note, I'll thank you very much for your time today. That was an excellent piece. I'm sure it's going to be a favourite amongst their viewers and listeners. Thank you very much for coming.
It's been a pleasure.
See everyone on the next episode. Bye.